Cycling doesn't have to be an exclusionary sport, only accessible for the fittest and most physically able. And I guess we all love chasing the KOMs and increasing our PBs, but to some people, cycling is much, much more. We've come to see Help for Heroes to find out what adaptations and tweaks they've made to help rehabilitation for injured service people, and how cycling can be an incredible tool for recovery, and I guess how it can be a sport for absolutely everyone. Help for Heroes, a British charity that supports British servicemen and women who have suffered illness or have been injured in the line of duty. Hannah Lawton is the sports recovery manager for Help for Heroes.
My job basically consists working around the whole sports recovery programme for the national team. So we look at different sporting events across the UK and worldwide that we can take part in and get beneficiaries to. I also look after the Invictus programme, so we take the UK team out to the Invictus Games.
So why do you think cycling is a great tool for recovery?
Cycling is great because you can do it indoors and you can do it outdoors. So guys can do training inside if the weather's not great or if they're not able to get out and they don't feel comfortable getting out, and they can go to the next level where they can go out onto the road with a group of people or with even staff from Help for Heroes have taken people out. Regardless of impairment type, there's pretty much a bike that will fit somebody, so they can get out of their chair, they can get out of their prosthetics, they can just get away from everything that's going on inside their head and just go and hit the open road. And it's a good sport to do it. This is Paddy. He was on a routine march with the Royal Marines where he slipped a disc and became paralysed down his right leg. He was then diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and he's been using cycling to aid his mental health.
Paddy, can you kind of tell us a bit about how you got into the Marines and a bit about your story?
I joined the Marines in 1992. I believe that's when you were born. I did 22 years in the Marines. At the 18-year point, I damaged my back. My disc came out of my back at L5-S1 and paralysed me, right leg. I was doing a speed march. I was just running along and all of a sudden I couldn't run anymore. My leg wouldn't work. And I was just sort of dragging my leg behind me. And you just get the normal instructor's attitude, you're weak, you get out of here, you get in the wagon, But for me, that wasn't the case, because I knew I could do it, and I'd been training and I'd been cycling on my road bike beforehand. I was out in Germany for 3 years working with the army, so I had to travel back and forward to work. So I used the road bike and used that as my training. So it was a case of a couple of days later, the disc had completely shifted in my back, trapped my spinal cord, my nervous system, and retracted my right leg underneath me, and then that was me, paralysed. I was left in a wheelchair. And after the surgeons done the work on it, they said that the nerve was permanently damaged and I'd never walk again.
Was that a really difficult moment?
Well, it was. I say, being so active, it was just red rag to a bull, and I swore at the surgeon and told him I would walk again. And I just got up and dragged myself out of the room. And that was pretty much the last time I used the wheelchair.
What's it like living with PTSD?
It's horrendous. I nearly didn't make it here today. I get various triggers, gunfire being one of them, and helicopters, which I can't see, are another. And just before I got in the car to come up here, I live beside a camp down in Poole, and they were training on the range. So I got into the car and started driving with that in my head, and I had to pull over sort of 20 minutes out from here and froze at the side of the road, and I just didn't know what to do. I rang my wife, chatted to my wife, and tried to bring myself down. And then it took me nearly half an hour to get here. And I stayed in the car park for 20 minutes. And it's just all these small things, just trying to, focus myself to get here. From being such a strong person, with a strong personality beforehand, to being in my own feeling weak, that you can't do it. You know, I was finding it hard to get out of the car. When I got to here, I sat on the wall outside. I couldn't actually get through the door. So it was the case I came into the counter and I went back out again. And I just had to slowly break myself in. And when I met Rachel earlier, I was shaking. And this was nearly an hour and a half after I was having the flashbacks when I was driving. So it's just, it is terrible. I can't remember the last time I actually slept without dreaming. I take medication to sleep. I take medication in the morning to get myself up and get me about. So it's horrendous.
How does cycling help with the recovery process?
I find the cycling does help my recovery because I can have a bit of release, because it's got nothing to do with being in the Marines. It's got nothing to do with being shot at. It's got nothing that sort of triggers me, because I can put my earphones in and I can just push myself. I can push myself as hard or as easy as I need. And it's just, for me, physically and mentally, it's just amazing. So I just needed something to refocus on, and cycling was one of those things that I focused on.
Paddy, thank you so much, and thank you for explaining a bit about your story. We've had a go on your hand cycle. Thank you for letting me go on it for first, but I think we should give the viewers a bit of an insight about a bit about your bike.
So I've went for a fully carbon fibre bike, and it's been specially moulded for me, and specially built. So it's, as I say, fully carbon. Even the grips are carbon. But it's set up pretty much like a normal road bike. You know, you've got your front gears, which would be your back gears, and your normal cog system. And it's just like a normal hand grip on any particular road bike. So, you're going down your gears and up your gears. But to move my shifting system at the top, I've got a lever below, which I manage to tap with my hand as I come round. Because it's both function as both hands round at one time. And as you've sort of found yourself, it can be quite a hard work to actually push around.
Oh, it's, without doubt, the hardest bike I've ever ridden, because I've got very small arms. Paddy here has, much stronger arms than I do. But it's amazing, isn't it? And it's incredible how fast you can go on then. Yeah,
well, I was competing in Sheffield earlier on this year, and I was sort of worked out I was doing 27 miles an hour on it. So in this is quite a speed.
What does it weigh?
16 kilos.
16 kilos. Wow. And then on the back here, lest we forget.
Yeah, just in memory of guys that we've lost, and friends that have gone. Never forgotten. I had to sort of reach out to some charities and get help to purchase the bike last year before going out to Sydney. So it's one of those things. It's we can't forget the guys.
No, agreed. Thank you so much, Paddy.
No, man.
This is Andy. He's a former sergeant in the Royal Signals. He had an overuse injury in his knee, and he used cycling to aid his depression through his mental health. Yeah,
it's very strange. I like a lot of active people. I just had a knee injury. Had to have my ACL replaced. You think that's fine. It went a little bit wrong during surgery, so I had a lot of infections, and it was nothing I particularly was concerned about. I was looked after pretty well in the hospital, but for some reason I ended up contracting Crohn's. I went through my entire career and childhood I don't think I even ever broke a bone.
No.
I never hurt myself. So to suddenly find I'm now not as invulnerable as maybe I thought I was, and actually realising that when you hurt yourself, whatever it may be, it really hurts.
Yeah.
You know, and it can just literally affect your life completely. You know, turns your world upside down. Being
in the army, you kind of feel like a real life action man, don't you? How does it feel when, well, that kind of all ends?
Yeah, it ends. You do feel like you should be able to handle everything, but actually you can't. You know, luckily I was married, I had a really supportive wife, and if I'd have been on my own, I'd have been in trouble. That was the only pillar of sport I had at the time to get me through that phase of being ill. So
it all happened in really quick succession, didn't it? I mean, you got your knee injury, and then it went to Crohn's, and then you got discharged. Now that's tough to go through. Oh yeah, I mean, that sort of situation. It's when you speak to people, it's like a spiral. You're in a spiral you can't escape from. You know, you get into a point where you just. I was having pain relief in hospital to the point where they were having to up every dose, go to a new pain relief medication, to a point where they could stick me with a whole load of morphine for a horse and I wouldn't even notice the difference. And you're just at that point going, well, there's going to be a very point where you're just going to crack. And I think luckily you just maybe didn't quite get that far. So you didn't have a history of cycling, but did you just think, I'd be good at cycling? Yeah, I didn't do any cycling. Started cycling with a pretty rubbishy bike. I remember I was in a very good club in North London, in Finchley, where, they're very organised, very disciplined, very experienced, and you just get quicker just by riding with people. I think that idea of being isolated on a mountain, I think admittedly probably going up the Glibbery I started crying at some point, but there was a point there where I was actually free and with clear mind, fresh air, this is actually healing as well as being quite painful on the legs. I still think that maybe, I even do it now, like I go on a Saturday morning, we have a club ride, it's a social club ride. The best bit about the club ride is actually getting to the coffee shop afterwards and having a chat, because we're all like-minded and we like to have a conversation, and that's probably the healing process.
So a lot of the guys that come obviously to Help Heroes and they start attending the different series of sports camps that we do, a lot of that is because they want to be a part of a team again and they want that camaraderie back and they want to be around like-minded people and back in kind of that military environment. And that's kind of what we aim to provide, and we hope that everybody that takes part gets something from that and allows them to go on to bigger and better things. How do you think cycling helps mental health? Mental health is quite a tough one, I guess. A lot of our cohorts that are coming through Help Heroes at the moment are around mental health, and a lot of the time it's been in that same environment and their brain never switching off, it's constant thought process. And actually by getting into a sport that regains your focus, it gives you an ability to do something with like-minded people, it gets you out of the house and out into an environment where you can kind of almost let all those thoughts dissipate. And it can be quite relaxing, quite calming. You can go for a steady bike ride or you can go and you can work really hard. I'm off to meet Jacko van Gas, who's actually a friend of mine. I've known him for a few years now. He actually got injured in Afghanistan where he lost his left arm and he had shrapnel in the left side of his body. It's going to be interesting to hear his story and how he became an athlete in cycling. Jacko grew up in South Africa and at the age of 20 flew to the UK to join the British Army. In 2009, Jacko just completed his last mission of his second 6-month tour of Afghanistan, and he and his platoon were due to be picked up by a helicopter. The pilot, however, spotted something and wasn't confident with the landing site, so sent the platoon coordinates to a different landing site in the desert. It was here that they ran into enemy forces, and Jacko's life changed forever.
We were receiving fire from various different fire locations and almost getting surrounded to a degree. So the Taliban fired 2 RPGs, rocket-propelled grenades, from my left flank. So the first came over our heads and exploded in the distance, missing us. But the second one was fired low, bouncing, ricocheting off the ground. In my night vision goggles, I can just see this red glow heading towards me and the sound of this rocket just getting ever so louder, just louder and louder, and I knew it was going to be close. So as a kind of reaction, I twisted my body towards and kind of braced for the impact. So it exploded right next to me, and the blast blew me about 4 or 5 meters away from my original position. And it's when I was trying to hold my rifle in the correct firing position that it just fell to the ground, or it just didn't feel right. And it's at that moment when I looked down that I realized that I've actually lost my left arm. So my arm was severed from my body immediately. there was an element of accepting that quite quickly, and I think because I do remember it slightly from that night, from the incident. What was a bigger shock to me, surprisingly to a lot of people, was actually all the other injuries I sustained. Because, like I say, it's almost like I remember the arm slightly, but what I didn't know was, I had a collapsed left lung. I had shrapnel wounds to my left side. I woke up with a colostomy, and I'm like, what's a colostomy? How does it work? I've lost 1/3 of muscle and tissue to my left upper thigh. It was really touch and go whether I was even going to keep my left leg. That was, it had a few infections and injuries and stuff like that. So the doctors was really considering amputating it, but they were like, well, we'd rather try and keep it than. So that was a concern for me. And then I've broken my knee, my ankle, all the other injuries, and that was actually almost harder than the arm.
How did you find cycling?
It was the one thing that was kind of easy adaptable. Even just sitting on a training bike, on a static bike, on a watt bike in the gym. I only needed the one arm to kind of hold myself up, but I can still turn my legs. And again, especially for my left leg, it was really good rehab. So through my rehabilitation, I really found cycling very, very helpful, very useful. I then started learning about parasport and paracycling. I went off to bought a bike, and I first started off running with one arm, and it was well difficult. I found it so hard. Your body's just twisted, and the pressure just on your one arm, the one palm, and then trying to brake as well, do gears. But through my rehabilitation of Haley Court, I always wanted to get back on a motorbike. So I had this motorbike prosthetic, and I just adapted that and put it on my bike. So it enabled me to put weight through both shoulders and then start learning to steer again. But it really set me on a trajectory that I went from having an interest into cycling to making a career out of it now.
When did you know you could kind of turn cycling into a career?
It's a really good question. Knowing when I started, I think it was just a passion about cycling was always there, and that burned so bright in me that it was more the passion and drive for cycling to potentially become a Paralympian. I was on that trajectory, but it was really, I think, a turning point for me was the London Olympics and Paralympics in 2012. I was inspired by that, and I went to a few events, and I was like, wow, I want a bit of this. And that really driven me to eventually leave my job and go on to a Paralympic Pathfinder Day, where you literally get introduced to what it potentially could be as an athlete. You do tests, and I got deemed as having talent, so then very slowly they work with you, and you start racing a little bit domestically, and it's just it's a brilliant pathway that they've got set out. So from day one, and then I've made it through a development team, onto the academy, onto the British team, and my goal was to partake in Rio 2016. I narrowly, sadly missed out on the final team to go, but I've learned a great deal from that.
Right, this is one thing I'm actually really excited about, is taking a look at your bike and how you kind of adapted it to make it work for you. Can we go and have a look at it?
Let's do that.
Let's do it.
This is my favourite, from all the bikes I own, which is several, this is by far my favourite one. Just the versatility that this bike offers. Today it's in its road racing kind of mode or setup with the lovely deep section wheels, and then I can just change into some gravel bike wheels and then go and take some awesome trails wherever it's needed. So this is my prosthetic. This is the one I've developed over a number of years now, and this is what I find really comfortable. It's got an aerodynamic kind of shape to it, and it's just so simple and easy to use. I wear a liner over my stump, and it works on a suction system. Underneath here I've got a little one-way valve, so with the liner on I push in and it pushes out all the air at the bottom, so nothing comes back in, and it just sits there nice and tightly. Over here I have a simple mountain bike bar end. And as I said to you early on as well, I've recognized that the simpler you keep something, the better it works. So this is literally a mountain bike bar end, padded out with electrical tape. And over the years, it's formed a lovely little groove into it. And my arm purely sits on there,
nice.
like that. So that is me secured to the bike. And it's in a position or at an angle that I can push through, and I can also get out of the saddle and rotate the bike underneath me. So that was important for me to be able to do that, because a lot of other systems doesn't really offer that. So that's me in a racing or very aggressive position,
on the hood.
And the slighter one is going uphill or having something to eat, having something to drink, that I just pop into the smaller one.
And then how you've got all the shifting and everything on this side. Can you talk us through that?
That's right. So obviously, most importantly, it comes down to brakes. I have here a three-way system, so a three-way splitter. So this is the main cable running obviously from the brake into here, and then it just pushes the fluid to the front brake, and then some more to the rear brake. So by pulling one lever, I'm getting both brakes kind of stopping at the same time. So there's advantages to that, there's slight disadvantages to it as well, but it's a system that works really well, and it enables me to kind of run quite a smooth, looking system.
And then on to shifting, going into the big ring and using all the gears on the back. Is that all done on one lever?
Again, all done on one lever. Fantastic system by Shimano, the synchro shift. It works really, really well for me. So I've got it set up in a ratio that I like. So I'm mostly in the big ring, and it goes all the way up to the very top of the block. And the second last one, once I go into the biggest gear on the back, it will then drop to the small gear on the front, and then shift down a few extra ones on the back. So the kind of ratio between gears is really good. But no, the synchro shift system works really well for me.
So before I got here, cycling to me was getting to the finish line, working on my power output and getting PBs. But now I'm here, I've kind of learned that cycling can really change someone's life. Getting out on the bike and feeling that fresh air can save someone's life. I have to say, I've had the most incredible day and absolutely loved it. Thank you so much to these guys for all the time. If you'd like to, subscribe to GCN, where do you click?
Down there.
And if you want to give this video a big thumbs up, what do you do, Jacko?
A big thumbs up.
And for more videos, click down there.